Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is Reconstruction and reunification of the South after the Civil War. And we're fortunate to have with us to talk about this very, very significant and important historical topic, Dr. RMitchell from Fisk University. And of course, Dr. Mitchell, let me welcome you to the show this morning.
Thank you, Dr. Haynes. It's a pleasure to be invited.
And to tell you, Dr. Mitchell, how indeed happy we are to have you here. This is the beginning of a new season for us, and we've had you on just numerous times, a number of times, yes. And each time, as we said before, you bring us such excellent information. As a matter of fact, we often think about the video that we did with you on slavery and the Emancipation Proclamation and all of those things. And so what we'd like to do today, Dr. Mitchell, is to recognize that this is really the beginning of the voting season here, and so to sort of bring a topic in that would deal with the suffrage and the whole problems that came out of the Reconstruction of the South. But before we get into that, Dr. Mitchell, let's have you to give us some information about your background, your education, and what in a real sense motivated you to do the things that you're doing.
Well, thank you, Dr. Haney. It's been wonderful over the last almost 30 years now. I've been on the faculty at Fisk for 20 years. I'm a native of Nashville, educated in the Catholic and public schools of Nashville, attended undergraduate school at Fisk, and did a master's degree at Tennessee State and a doctoral degree at Middle Tennessee State. But I guess this morning I'm going to rather surprise you. I was looking back over some notes, and 30 years ago this year in 1972, I was invited to Vanderbilt to hear a young professor who they had brought there named James Haney.
Okay, that's a long time.
I was brand new faculty at MTSU, and you reach a point in life where you're looking through your notes and papers.
Okay.
And there was a young man there with a large afro and a dashiki named James Haney. And I was down at MTSU. We were beginning our teaching careers.
That's exactly it. And of course, that's what when we met one another.
That's right. That's right.
That's been a long time.
So it's been, I think, good over the years. The things we've discussed and really the popularization of history. It's really made the teaching of where students come to college now with a great yearning and desire to know about our national past. Since September 11th, one year ago, or the year 2001, Americans have tried to find their place in the world. So it's still a thrilling profession discussing American history, and particularly African-American history.
Okay, I'll tell you, Dr. Mitchell, let's talk about the period of Reconstruction, the period that followed immediately after the war. And I think you noticed that when we introduced the topic today, we said Reconstruction and reunification of the South after the Civil War, and et cetera. Let's talk about that, and let's have you to start talking about it by talking about what you consider to be the Reconstruction period in American history, and sort of bring our audience into what we're doing.
The Reconstruction period is one of the most vital periods in the country's history. Generally, when history is taught, high school and college level, we teach it from exploration to 1865. We pick up with the war and Reconstruction. I tell people the Reconstruction period did for me as an African American what the end of the American Revolution did not do. It provided me with the vote. It freed me. So it's what we call a watershed event in United States history. What we sometimes don't realize is that it was a great political struggle. So a political struggle between a North and a South that had been engaged in war for several years. But it was also a political struggle between a president and the Congress. Reconstruction was not easy. Reconstruction was not intended to be easy. Abraham Lincoln, who really did not believe the country could be divided by war, wanted to make the Reconstruction process quick. He wanted the country back in place. He couldn't deal with a disunited Union. But members of his own party, the Republican Party, who had fought that war, disagreed. They wanted to make Reconstruction of the South by Southerners virtually impossible. They wanted to collect emotion from a war effort. They wanted to punish the South. So as much as Reconstruction may be painted as reunion, before there could be reunion, there had to be a bit of disunion. As the young people said, we had to pay for the crimes. And in the eyes of Northern Republicans, radicals within Lincoln's party, the crime had been ever leaving the Union. So there's a struggle. Reconstruction is a point of struggle. Lincoln initially wanted 10% of the South, 10% of those who had voted in the election of 1850 to swear allegiance. But then you've got to look at who voted in 1850. Women didn't vote. Certainly black people didn't vote. And those who didn't own land didn't vote. So only a small percentage of those actually voted. Of that, he only wanted 10% to swear allegiance, and he would declare states reunited.
Now, is this what they meant by Lincoln having what might be considered a very, very mild and
very mild, very
sympathetic policy toward the South?
And really, it was towards the South, but really it was his support of the Union. He wanted that Union back and functioning. This is what he'd argued the war was fought about, and many people miss the fact that the war wasn't fought as much about slavery as it was about maintaining the Union.
Go on.
Maintaining that Union. Lincoln hoped that the Union would be back and functioning within a year. Unfortunately, there's such a disunion in the country that Lincoln's assassination is brought on by the question of this reuniting the Union. The ultimate question were those Southerners who were upset with Lincoln. He had the radicals, they're upset with Lincoln. Lincoln really is in a state where he can't carry out what he wishes. When his bill goes to the Congress, his Wade Davis bill that brought about Reconstruction, it doesn't go anyplace. The Congress stifles it. Then they bring forth a bill, and when that bill comes to Lincoln, the radical player, he lets it lay on his desk and lets Congress go out of session. He exercises his pocket veto. So the struggle that ensues after the Civil War is as much a battle between a president and Congress as we've ever experienced. Presently, in the world situation where we're looking at the events and planning war, or looking at war, and there's a struggle between the president and the Congress, that's very reminiscent of that era after Reconstruction. It's a detrimental era for the entire nation. It's very detrimental for the South. It's very detrimental for African Americans because caught up in the struggle, we are exploited, we are exploited. So we have to look at an actual struggle. Finally, it's decided that the Army of the North will occupy the South. And there will be a period of time before there will be voting in the South. They decide, those who control the Congress decide, that they want the Southern states to swear they had always been loyal. And to many of the Southern state leaders, this was upsetting because they hadn't been loyal. They had formed a confederacy. They had formed a separate union. So the struggle for Reconstruction continues. Caught up in that struggle will be the emancipation and the vote of the black man. And there was nothing more troubling to Southerners than to see those who were formerly enslaved suddenly marching to the polls and voting.
And so Dr. Mitchell, as we near this first commercial break that we have here today, we find that in this whole struggle that will erupt after the war, which is to say that this is almost a continuation of the intensity of the emotions between the North and the South. It might no longer be the battle as such, but it is emotional and quite involved. But now, one of the things that we'd like for you to talk about after we come back from this break is the citizenship rights of Africans during this time, because I think we know that in 1865, the 13th Amendment is passed that will give them freedom.
That's right.
But now the 14th Amendment, that's this whole idea of African American citizenship. I think that that's one of the most important elements that we could deal with at this particular point, I mean, in this part of the show this morning.
Exactly. And we will always remember that freedom and equality are not synonymous.
Good, very good. And of course, after we take this first commercial break, we'll come back and we'll give you an opportunity to talk about the Reconstruction Act of 1867 and how Africans were eventually brought into the whole political process, because there were quite a bit of opposition in the South and to a lesser degree in the northern states in reference to African American participation in politics and citizenship and whatnot. And I want you to sort of lay that out as you so well do in some of these other parts that we've dealt with before. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. The topic